the show was produced and financed by the 700 Club. And a lot of people didn't know that. And we had a really family-type oriented show that we tried to present a show that the whole family could sit down together and not really be, insulted or embarrassed. And I think because of all the deaths, and the drug-related things that happened with Gino and with Mike and other guys, I think that the family just said, hey, we don't want to be a part of this no more. Look how Vince McMahon's ratings dropped when he had 2 deaths, Eddie Guerrero and Benoit. His ratings, he lost 1 million viewers nationally. Imagine what it did to our audience in Fort Worth, Dallas. People said, they're not what they say they are. We don't want our children watching. I mean, we had played to a family audience. And it's like Ozzie and Harriet. If David and Ricky went out and raped 2 girls, people would say, that ain't like Ozzie and Harriet, you know? I mean, people, they get comfortable with the show and they want to know that they can watch the show with their family and they're not going to be embarrassed. But with all the deaths, the drug overdoses and the other things, people just turn the channel.
The bad press that started to flow, with all the problems. This was something where, especially the Dallas people, they could go out and see you, and they'd see you around, and you were recognized everywhere. But when the news started flowing and things were bad, and they're still seeing you everywhere, it keeps bringing up the bad images. It just didn't help.
General, you want to add anything to that, or they covered everything?
You guys defend Ken, come on.
Do what now?
Did you want to add anything to what they said about the Von Erichs and all the deaths and the Brody, or did they cover it all?
No, I think everything's been covered, really. I think it's a little bit here and a little bit there, and when you combine them, then it happens. I do think that if things had been done differently, they would have went on an even keel, but I don't think they would have ever gained the initial success that they had before at that time, but they still would have kept going, But everybody became paranoid when McMahon was going to run, and Andre came and told the Dallas office that he thought that they were going to start running, and Bruce said, no, they can't run in our town. And Vern said that, yeah, they can't run in our town. But everybody knows what happened.
Yeah.
So, and then Crockett, they wanted to emulate New York, go out on the road. That was a big mistake. So, really and truly, when you're looking back at world class, you just sit back and enjoy the glory years because it'll never be duplicated again. And it was a great organization. I was happy to be a part of it, and all I can tell you people is just go out and enjoy it and think about the good things.
The great thing is it's been 25 years and we're sitting here talking about it.
True. That's
Well,
true.
but I
Think
think,
about that.
one of the things I think that was a mistake was bringing Wild West back in with the Von Erich story. The show Gary didn't like the show Wild West. I was there with the Wild West side, and we had a lot of fun doing it. It was all right. It was a very young upstart thing. Ken Mantell had every dollar he had into it. When it went back into with Von Erich, it all just collapsed. And Ken lost his ass on the deal. But when he had a meeting with all the guys that were in Wild West, and he was excited to say that we're going to join back in with world class, and we're going to bring this all back into one and go on together. And Buddy Roberts, he threw a hissy fit. He said, "No, don't don't do that. It's the wrong thing to do." And he was right. It was the wrong thing to do. It shouldn't have gone back in. We should have stayed where we were. I don't know that it would have helped or hurt, but That didn't work out.
I tell you a funny story. I was telling Bill at Skandor last night. When Ken Mantell came back in because Fritz didn't want competition, he came to me one day and he gave me a list of names. And it was the list of talent with the Wild West. And he said, you booked the show for them. And I said, I ain't booking Wild West. I'm the booker for World Class. You have them to do it. No, he said, no, you have to do it. It's part of the deal with Kenny. You have to book his shows. So I had the list of names. I went home. I asked my children, who was 7 and 9, I guess at the time. I said, do you want to book a show for Daddy? They said, of course. So for a couple of TV shows, my 2 children booked them. They weren't bad shows. No worse than you guys had before.
What? No, I'd like to see the show.
Well, it's been the last couple.
The last couple.
Good, Scott.
For Bill, Scott Hall Lindsay did an interview where he said that back in the AWA when you and his brother fought him and Kurt Hennig, that you two didn't get along and you would try to bury him in the matches. I was wondering if you have any opinion on that.
Well,
Kurt Hennig, don't get buried, Larry.
no, he's not saying Kurt. You said Scott Hall, right?
Oh,
You know, somebody told me that last night. I was doing that shoot interview, and the guy there mentioned to me that Scott Hall said that he didn't have any time for the Irwins, and I thought to myself, what? I mean, I never had a crossword with the guy, and he was in Atlanta later on in his career, and I was there, and we got along. I mean, we got along. He was never. Let's just say he was never my best buddy. I didn't go out to the bars with him. I didn't ride up and down the roads with him. But I knew him, and I never had a problem with him. And now to hear that you know, we tried to bury him, I think what the problem might be, and if he thinks he was trying to be buried, is Scott and I worked with him and Henning up in Minnesota, and we worked around with them. And, you know, there's another guy that was, I used to work, when I went to Montreal with Scott, we worked against Rikishi when he was a loafa, when he was a young kid. And his tag team partner used to always accuse us of trying to bury him too. But the thing is that when you've got real charisma and another guy, and the real charisma was Henning, and Scott Hall was good, he was no problem, right? A big guy. But when you got the charisma Henning and he comes in and he's fiery and flying and gets you going, and then Hall comes in, someone's got to sell. Someone's got to get beat up. You can't put both guys over. Someone's got to do it. And trying to get it on Henning or trying to get it on a loafa up in Montreal, it just didn't work. So it always ended up to go on the other guy. I don't have anything against Scott Hall. You know, I have nothing but good things to say about Scott. I don't know what to say about him other than, you know, demons.
Just forget it.
You know.
Forget it. Please give him up to Lynn.
Yeah, Lynn. I don't know. If Scott Hall walked in now, I'd be more than happy to
Well,
talk to him.
I had Scott Hall with, I did a little brief booking for Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico, and he lived in Florida. It was cheap transportation, so, and, you know, later on, I think he got out of that robot, but he worked like the bodybuilders.
Yeah.
He had that robot deal. I think finally when he became that Ramon guy up there, I think he loosened up a little bit. He's a little better now. But at that time, he was very, very difficult to work with. And I used to give him, sometimes I'd give him a finish, and he says, that's kind of lame, isn't it? I said, I don't know. You think it's lame? He said, well, I don't know. I said, that's right, because you don't know. It'll be, you know, well, let's do it.
Steve?
Mr. Gary Hart, I know you've booked a lot of talent, you've observed a lot of talent, and you said that you wouldn't put anyone, you know, up at the top of the rank unless you thought that guy could sell. Was there ever a time where a wrestler surprised you that you thought would not make it, but actually did?
No, never. I knew going in who would and who wouldn't, because I chose the people by the reaction. You got to remember, a guy like Bill Irwin, first night in, okay, the first night in, the energy he had when he left the dressing room and starts down the aisle. The people recognize him right away. That's what I looked for. I looked for guys that the people connected with. And anytime you follow what the people like, you can never go wrong. You just package them and structure them and present them in a way with opponents that will enhance what they already have going for them. And I like to say I put a blanket around the guy, like Bill. The only one that would beat Bill would be a Von Erich. No one else would beat Bill. Everyone else that Bill wrestled, Bill would beat. But when it got to the Von Erichs, they wouldn't beat him every night. Sometimes we would use disqualifications or countouts. The whole thing is, look at Bill Goldberg. There is a quintessential angle. Here's a guy that was on TV week after week after week, beating people 30, 20, 40 seconds. It took about 12 weeks, and pretty soon somebody said, woo, this guy is amazing. The people made Bill Goldberg. Kevin Sullivan was smart enough to notice the reaction he got, put a blanket around Goldberg, and the rest was history. If you go with what the people like, you can't lose. You cannot lose. But I will say this, people that I knew wouldn't make it, but I took a chance, never made it.
Right.
Gary, what about the famous Dusty Rhodes face turn in Florida? You
Oh,
managed
that
him
was
and Pat
remarkable.
Sullivan.
Yeah,
That's history.
I met Dusty, I believe I met him in 68, I believe. He was just starting, and he was a tag team partner, Don Jardine. The spoiler and I chose him as tag team partner. And then I took Dusty with me to Australia, spent a little time there. So Dusty and I, we were really good buddies, still are very close. And at the time, I had him and Pak Song, and we were slowly getting him to switch, where I would tell Dusty to do something and he would rebel, and him and I would get in arguments, but we would always come back together before the night was over. And the people were the ones that wanted him to switch. I mean, we knew from the feel of the crowd, the way, when you're getting 70% of the cheers and you're working against guys like the Briscoes and Don Morocco, that's got to tell you, when we would get introduced in Miami, Pak Song and I, there'd be a big boo. And with Dusty, it'd be half and a little more than half for the cheers. And it was obvious. And rather than trying to stoke it, we just did it. And because of Dusty and I's interview ability and our friendship, you know, we would go out of the way for each other. So that's what really propelled Virgil into becoming the American Dream. That was a great time. And very seldom will that happen the way that happened, that the people take to a guy even though he's coming off as a heel, but they still liked him. And we were smart enough to realize that the people wanted him to switch. So we took their lead, and that's how that all came about. It was a great run, like 16 weeks in a row we sold out every building that we were in, which is very difficult to do.
Who came up with the rock and roll Buck Zumbo? Who came up with that gimmick and why?
I have no idea, but I wish they hadn't. So Bill and him know each other from Minnesota.
That's Buck. That is Buck. That's Buck right from, Buck came through Vern Gagne's camp along with my brother Scott, along with Steamboat, Richard Blood. There was a Jan Nelson who died in a car wreck very many years ago. And there's another guy, I can't remember exactly what happened to him. But Buck came through all of that. Cosgrove was hurt. Viserys was the trainer. And Buck came through, but right from the get-go, Buck was always just, he was always a crazy bastard, you know, and him carrying that rock and roll thing, I remember that forever. And that's just him. He still does that. He's still up in Minnesota doing exactly the same thing. And he'll never change. I mean, what you see is what you get completely there. I mean, people, you know, bookers, people, if you wanted a character out of a particular individual, that character had to be somewhat of a part of the guy somewhere. Might not be his whole personality, but with Buck, that's Buck.
I'll just say that we didn't cover this before in closing, we'd be remiss that we didn't cover the WWE produced the Tragedy DVD. This is for all three, you guys, you can go down there, road. What are your thoughts on it? And on that DVD, if you watch, which I'm sure everybody here and you guys have seen, Michael Hayes takes a lot of credit for that whole thing. You did cover that a little bit. I'd like to just, in closing this now, just cover that DVD, you know, your thoughts on the DVD, and we can start at Bill and work our way down. Did you see the DVD, Bill?
Yeah, I saw the DVD. Now, I saw the one, I watched the first one where it's a lot of the interviewing stuff. I think the second one has a lot of different matches on it, but Michael does take a lot of responsibility, but then again, what the heck did you think was gonna happen? I mean, if you know Michael, that's everything, that's what Michael's gonna say, you know? And with Michael and Buddy and Jimmy and that, yeah, but did Michael have a lot to do with it? Yeah, he did have a lot to do with it. Was it totally all him? Well, of course not. You know, anybody that's around the business is gonna know that, sure, you're gonna have someone on top, and sure, they come in and they were working the Von Erichs, but just the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, if that's all that was there that night, wouldn't have filled the building, right? You had to have support, you had to have other people, and so there was a lot of other things that went on that wasn't all Michael, right? Michael always says, I used to follow him around. Well, wait a minute, I was there first, wasn't I?
Yes, you were.
You know, just, anyway, that's always been the joke. Michael and I are still friends, and, you know, he still says, oh, you keep following me around. I says, yeah, I've been carrying you for years. And, you know, it's just a joke. But the DVD, is, from what I watched, you know, it was fine with me. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't think they cut it up or took what I was saying and made it sound like I was saying something else.
General?
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done to an extent, and there's gonna be differences of opinions and everything, and, you know, you have to understand that not only one person can do all this, one person can start and jumpstart and very valuable, but everybody has to carry it out. You know, with all the guys that we had, you know, we wouldn't ever had world class unless we had good talent too, so, and good manipulation. But I thought he was all right, and not everybody's gonna agree. You know, it's just like any other sport, you know, and what I say, you know, like everybody thinks the Southeastern Conference is the greatest college conference in the nation. I do, because I like college football. I don't like pros much, but I do like college. But see, everybody has a difference of opinion on it, but everything meshed together. And it was a great organization, and you know, and Gary had a great hand in it. Michael had a great hand in it. I'll tell you what, I went in and just reaped what was there, but I had good boys, and I was always serious in my work, and I always carried heat with me everywhere I went, because I didn't go out and put my arms. Nobody could ever say, hey, you know that Akbar, he's a good old boy, 'cause he came up and talked to us after the show. They never said that. I didn't come out and spit on them or curse them. All I did was ignore them. But I kept my heat all that time. So, you know, it takes a combination.
To me, I found fault was not the project itself. I thought it was a microcosm of what world class really was. What I resented most of all, and I love Michael Hayes, he's a great guy, but for him to say that no one ever went to Texas to further their career. I want you to think of a guy named Frank Goodish, ended up becoming Bruiser Brody. He did pretty good coming to Texas, didn't he? Let's take another guy by the name of Chris Canyon. He ended up becoming King Kong Bundy. Texas sort of helped his career. A guy like Wild Bill Irwin, a guy like Gino Hernandez, and the Freebirds themselves. I mean, who knew the Freebirds, in all honesty, outside of Mid-South and a little bit in Georgia, until they got on world-class TV that was in 82 markets in 7 foreign countries. Now, Michael was a very important part of world class. He was very important in the angle, but to me, Buddy Roberts was important, Terry Gardy was important, Bill Irwin, Skandor Akbar and his crew, Jimmy Garvin, Kamala. I mean, it wasn't a one-stroke thing. It was a multitude of guys that you could stack your card. And I learned that from Bill Watts. Bill Watts was great at stacking his card and making every match on the card mean something. Michael was very, very important, but when he says that Texas was some kind of small, little, quaint territory that no one ever wanted to go to, Ricky Flair, Harley Race, they sold out the Sportatorium, Will Rogers Coliseum, they sold out Reunion Arena. We had several big houses in Texas Stadium long before the Birds come. And that's the only thing I really thought that I didn't like it, because I think people like Bundy, like Brody, like Gino, like Bill, Terry, who knew Jimmy Garvin before he came to World Class? Did you ever hear of Jimmy Garvin before he came